Konnichiwa, it's Justin Morris here again with another episode of the Diabetes Inside Vlog. Now, last episode, I was talking a bit about the differences between living with type 1 diabetes between Japan and Australia. Lucky me, I'm just on my way back from a 2-week trip in Japan where I got to travel around the country visiting different summer camps for children with type 1 diabetes. Now, on this trip, it really highlighted to me some of the issues that young people with type 1 diabetes have to deal with in Japan. And one of the biggest ones, I think, is people are not so aware of what is possible despite their challenge of type 1 diabetes. Now, across each of these summer camps I visited, at each one, I got to meet a young person who had a real special dream. And I was lucky to be able to inform them of an example of someone who had achieved that dream before. So stay tuned. I want to take you around the country and go through some of the role models of people who live with the challenge of type 1 diabetes. The first summer camp I visited was in the beautiful port city of Kobe, just south of Tokyo. And in the mountains inland from Kobe in the Hyogo prefecture, we visited this really beautiful summer camp, was up in the mountains. And at this summer camp, I met a young boy, and he said his dream was to be a singer. And he did not know whether it would be possible with type 1 diabetes. I got to share the story about Nick Jonas, who is one of the Jonas Brothers, a very famous American pop band who sing cool songs. And Nick Jonas also lives with the challenge of type 1 diabetes. And as well as being a very famous pop star, he also started a support group for people with type 1 diabetes called Beyond Type 1. From Kobe, we traveled back north and closer to Tokyo in the Chiba prefecture. We did a summer camp very close to a beach called Samu. Beautiful long beach, was amazing, a very warm day, atsui. At this camp, I met a young girl who loved baseball, and she used to watch the Japanese baseball tournaments, watch the Major League Baseball tournaments in America, and think that was so cool. I got to share the story about a Japanese baseball player called Minoru Iwata. He played for the Hanshin Tigers and also lived with type 1 diabetes. In the USA, some of the professional baseball players in the Major League Baseball competition also have type 1 diabetes. So despite the challenge of type 1 diabetes, playing professional baseball need not hold you back. Again, on the coast, in the beautiful island of Kyushu, southern Japan, there's this beautiful town called Miyazaki. Miyazaki has some stunning coastline. I believe there is some famous surfing there. There was some really fancy seafood there that we got to eat. At the summer camp in Miyazaki, I met a young girl and her mother. She was recently diagnosed with type 1 diabetes and had for a long time been playing volleyball. She found that the diagnosis of type 1 diabetes had meant she couldn't attend the training properly, she was missing games, would often have to come off the court to manage her type 1 diabetes. It was really impacting her performance on the volleyball court. I got to share with her a special story about a Dutch volleyball player. His name is Bas van der Goor. He won a gold medal at the Olympic Games in the sport of volleyball after he was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. He's very, very famous in the country of the Netherlands, and he's actually made a foundation called the Bas van der Goor Foundation to promote living with type 1 diabetes and being able to do sport at the same time. It inspires a lot of young people in his country and the rest of the world that diabetes need not hold you back from pursuing whatever it may be. From Miyazaki, we traveled north through Kyushu, through another city called Oita, which is very famous for its thermal hot springs. I didn't get to visit the hot springs this time, but I did go to another cool summer camp in the mountains behind Uita. At the Oita summer camp, I met a young girl who had been swimming, and she had this really cool dream to be an Olympic swimmer. But like the girl with volleyball, was feeling like the diabetes was holding her back from being able to be her best at swimming. Well, in the sport of swimming, there's a special guy whose name is Gary Hall Jr. He won 5 Olympic gold medals, and the whole time during his professional swimming career, he lived with the challenge of type 1 diabetes. Since he finished his swimming career, he actually went on to become a doctor, and he's now an orthopedic surgeon, and of course, still lives with the challenge of type 1 diabetes. Gary Hall Jr. often speaks about competing at a high level and dealing with the challenge of type 1 diabetes. From Oita, we went back north to the island of Honshu and the city of Okayama. Okayama is very famous for farming peaches. In Okayama, I got to attend another summer camp, which was at a very special school. It was, I believe, the second oldest school in Japan, which used to teach Confucius and some other really interesting studies many, many years ago. But on this day, it was host to a summer camp for young people with type 1 diabetes. And at this summer camp, I met a young boy. He was about 8 years old, and his dream, like mine when I was that age, was to be a pilot. And he was unsure, of course, about the regulations and whether it would be possible with type 1 diabetes to be a pilot. There's a guy in Australia, and his name is Dr. Jeremy Robertson. He was a pilot for the Australian airline called Qantas. Whilst he was a pilot, he was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. Qantas took away his ability to be a pilot and said, unfortunately, we can't let you fly with type 1 diabetes. Dr. Jeremy Robertson then thought, this does not have to be the case. I can manage my diabetes, I have continuous glucose monitoring. He pursued a career in medicine, became a doctor in medicine, and then went back to Qantas to prove it was possible to be a type 1 diabetic and a pilot. He did all kinds of tests, all kinds of research, and he is now a pilot with Australia's largest airline and deals with type 1 diabetes. And he has since inspired 2 other pilots in Australia who are also commercial airline pilots who live with type 1 diabetes. So I hope some of these stories have helped inspire your life with type 1 diabetes to prove that it doesn't matter if you want to pursue sports, it doesn't matter if you want to pursue being a pilot, a singer, a musician, a politician, whatever it may be, there is now an example in almost any industry of someone achieving great things despite the challenge of type 1 diabetes. Because type 1 diabetes, after all, it is that challenge, but it's not a barrier.